Folks, peace and welcome to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. Let's first discuss the undercount of the 2020 census, how blacks, Native Americans, Latinos, we've all been undercounted. How did something like this happen? Plus, let's talk about the sentencing of Jussie Smollett. Not necessarily the verdict or the sentencing, but what about the judge and what he had to say? Do you think that the judge went too far in this judgment? Later, we'll talk about the billion-dollar cost of police misconduct. Wait till I tell you, folks, how much it has cost this country to deal with bad cops. You will be blown away. And then later, Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. We'll discuss what the implications of this bill may be. And this is a bill that's gotten all of Florida talking. And a lot of parents and young people wondering what's next. We'll have that and a whole lot more. Stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. A lot to get to today, so let's jump right into it. First, let's talk about this report that came out yesterday from the Census Bureau said that they have actually undercounted Latinos, Native Americans, and Black people. Yes, folks, the 2020 census has admitted to the fact that they have done a significant undercount of these demographics. Yet they say that there are a total of 323 million people in the country still is accurate. How does that happen? In a few moments, we're going to talk to a former Census Bureau staff member to give us some insight about how this could possibly happen, given all the things that we know and all the things that can be done about the census. But let me just break this thing down for you very, very quickly, because this report has come out and has gotten everybody wondering, whoa, how did this go on? Well, you remember in 2020, of course, the big news of the year was COVID-19. And so the Census Bureau has put out a statement through its director, Mr. Robert Santos, that said that this has been a very, very challenging year. Let me just share with you what Mr. Santos said in his statement about this undercount. He said, quote, "This is notable given the unprecedented challenges of 2020, but the results also include some limitations. The 2020 census undercounted many of the same population groups we have historically undercounted, and it overcounted others." Wow. So historically undercounted, but overcounting others. Well, who are the overcounted? According to the Census Bureau, the census overcounted white and Asian American residents. Now, according to the report, it says that minority groups mostly concentrated in cities and tribal areas were underrepresented in census figures, even though the total population count in those areas often was fairly accurate. That could affect those groups' political clout and conceivably could sway decisions by businesses and governments over the next decade, from the allocation of city services to location of stores. The whole purpose of the census, folks, is that the government, businesses can use that data to make decisions on how to from everything from gerrymandering to everything to how money is allocated to various areas. All of that is determined by that data. Now, with this undercount, it looks like Blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans are once again will be left behind the eight ball, will be far behind in getting the necessary allocation of resources or getting any type of resources for their communities. I want to check in now. We got our culture crew member, Bakari Jones, who's joining us as she does every Friday. Bakari is an activist within the LGBTQIA community and a strategist. And then in a few moments, we'll bring on Mr. Kim Chase, who is a former Census Bureau worker. But let's bring Bakari in at this point. Bakari, good to see you, sis. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, Farajii. Happy Friday. Thank you for having me again, bro.
Absolutely, absolutely. Bakari.
Let's talk about it, Farajii.
2020 census. Now, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I remember before even having, when I was doing my radio show during the time that in the 2020 census, I was telling people all the time, fill out the census form, fill out the census form. You know, it was a big push by my station at that time to get people to fill out the census form. So I online and did it. It took me like 5 minutes to do it. And then I'm telling other people, it's all it's about is a count. It's a count so we can start getting some money, so we can start making some better decisions. It will strengthen us in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
You see this massive push, especially from, you know, influencers, Black leaders, and all of those folks who are telling people, get out there. And then you get to this point where the Bureau itself says, we undercounted you guys. So sorry. So sorry. What do we make of that?
To be honest, Farajii, you know, I have a lot of thoughts on this. One, just the title of the New York Times article, you know, for me, it's like even just the title, it makes you wonder, is there a little bit of what, you know, like the red herring, right? Because it's the headline is about undercounting Hispanic, Black, and Native American residents of the United States. There's not even in the, you know, not even underneath in that byline do we talk about the fact that there was another two other groups that were overcounted. Right. So in general, before we even get into the actual numbers, my thought is, well, why not just say that there are errors, that no one was accurately counted, right? Why do we point out the groups specifically that are undercounted? Because I think it's just as dangerous that one or several groups were undercounted and several groups were overcounted. So that's just kind of my first response when, you know, reading and just kind of learning more about that information. Now, I will also say, anybody that's worked in and around data, and just any testing, measuring, monitoring, you know, there's always a margin of error. There's always some margin of error. So I think, you know, just understanding, okay, we come into this knowing, yes, there's going to be some margin of error. Okay, no one's perfect. We're not robots. You know, we've talked a little bit about AI before. We don't necessarily even want to get into that space, right? But what margin of error is reasonable and what margin of error is unreasonable? And to be honest, Farajii, I think when it comes to undercounting any group during the COVID pandemic, I think that I would be more inclined to understand that. I just have to be honest. I am more alarmed and curious and want to know more about how do you overcount any particular groups in a pandemic. That is just kind of where my mind goes. So I know we're talking about the groups that were undercounted, but I cannot, you know, that's one of the questions that I want to ask when you bring a guest on today. How do you overcount groups in this instance? That's just kind of, you know, because it boils down to representation, right? As you just said, right? That's why there's such a big push, because based on, you know, what these numbers say, they impact so many different things within our country, right? That you said, all this data, the way this used by our government, by businesses to, you know, reappropriate seats to the House of Representatives, so on and so forth. My first thought is, how do you overcount groups? I want to know how that group gets counted, you know, more highly. So that's just where my thoughts are, Farajii.
Well, let's ask that question and a few others as we bring in our guest, Mr. Kim Chase, who is a former Census Bureau staff member. Mr. Kim, thank you so much, dear brother, for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Farajii. Good afternoon. And the young lady, I didn't get your name again. Tell me, is it
Bakari?
Bakari. I'm sorry about that. And good afternoon to both of you. Hope you're enjoying the beautiful day.
Oh, absolutely, Brother Kim. Absolutely. So, Brother Kim, talk to us about this. I don't know what to call this. Is this, I mean, the Census Bureau director himself, Mr. Santos, said, hey, we messed up. But then how do you undercount one group or a number of groups, overcount another group, and then still reach an accurate total for the country of, and right now, the way it stands, it looks like we're at about 323.2 million people in this country. How does that happen?
Well, first of all, I want to say that when you deal with census